An economist is going to be joining us in discussing these conditionalities. And of course, joining us is Fisayo Fatade. He is the CEO of Business Kinetics Nigeria Limited. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the LXP Morning Flight.
Good morning, sir.
Good, good morning. Good morning.
How are you doing today,
Good
sir?
morning. Oh, fine, thank you.
Yes, sir. Very well, thank you,
Great,
sir. So we have seen a recurring decimal across nations in the world, especially when it comes to borrowing without understanding conditionality policies. First things first, what exactly are conditionalities before we even talk about borrowing without understanding what conditionality is?
Okay, thank you very much. I listened to Man of God, Pastor Chris, when he just talked about that. Very good. Conditionalities are the policies that the IMF or the lender will give you for you to be able to access their fund. And I believe that a whole lot of countries that wants to access F loan understand the conditions that have understand the policies very well. But the reality on ground, which has been said during this conversation, is the fact that IMF loan is a short-term loan. Meanwhile, the country that are in it, they want to use this loan to settle long-term projects. So there is a problem. I am not a charity organization. They are in the business of making profit. So definitely, when they give you a loan, they will also try to see whether they can influence the way the country is run in terms of your economy, whether they can influence the way CBN policies of that country is. And the reason why they want to basically is to ensure first that they return that country back to a stage where their balance of payment is fine, and also, most importantly, for them to be able to get their money back. Now, there have been a lot of disagreement or debate around the fact that most countries cannot pay this loan. That IMF know they can't pay this loan. But the truth of the matter, which everybody has said there, is the fact that the lender will not want you to pay that loan immediately because that is where it's making profit. So even if you pay the loan immediately, he will want to give you another loan because without him giving you the loan, he's not
You'll
making
not be
any
able.
profit.
True.
So the business of IMF, and remember that the money that IMF has is from different member that form the IMF. So they contributed there. And there is a need for them to also recoup the money back. So if they give you and they give severe conditions or policies to, and the quick one for them really, that will bring the money back to them is to influence how a country can quickly adjust tax reform. So they can increase the tax because that is how the government can quickly increase their GDP. For instance, they just jack up the tax and the revenue of that country will improve. Then they can service their loan back at that point in time. So that is why it is now difficult for the citizens because by the time you are the burden of IMF loan and to implement some of these policies that you use before you access the fund in your own country. So a whole lot of people will imagine. I think recently the federal government just increased taxes on some items and things like that.
Yeah.
The
Yes, sir.
conversations have been on for some time that the taxes will be increased. But the president didn't want to do it because he knows that the poor will suffer more when the taxes are increased because the price of things will go up and things like that. So that is why the president has left the economy to be controlled by the monetary policies handled by
Wow.
CBN. And what the CBN was simply doing was to increase the interest rate so as to prevent people from borrowing. Maybe that will make the inflation to come down a bit and things like that. But that will
But sorry,
not
sir, with
even.
all these policies that are being created by the CBN, we still see nations like, for example, our nation, Nigeria, still borrowing. And many a times we realize that they don't even understand what is going for exchange with the number of amounts that they are borrowing from either the IMF or any other financial institution that provides loan to different countries that are in need.
Sorry, let me just add. Is it that they don't understand, or they see the conditionalities and just want to ignore and put their people in this kind of distress? I just want to have an idea, sir.
Okay, okay. Let me just talk quickly. For any country to develop, your infrastructure needs to be fine.
Yes.
Bit of history here. Around 1960s, Nigerian currency was stronger than the British pound. Why? Because the non-oil of the economy was doing very well. So the exportation was doing very well. We were exporting to the Europe and things like that, and we are getting foreign currency in return. Then, when we moved to the time around 1980s to 1990s, when the oil was discovered, the oil boom happened. That's because of what the OPEC did at that point in time. Nigeria started benefiting from the oil. Then the focus on the non-oil reduced. Nobody was focusing on the non-oil sector again. So we weren't getting foreign exchange from the non-oil sector. We were focusing on the oil sector. And later, at some point, the infrastructures that we have is getting decayed, and we have clear strategy on how to replace some of these infrastructures. And that has always been from successive government. Everybody wanted the infrastructure. Nobody, no, because if you as a president wants to focus on infrastructural development, definitely people will not have money, because that means for your capital project, you are going to do a lot of budget for the capital. Meanwhile, your recurrent project will suffer. So people will not have money to spend. Why you get so much money building roads, building infrastructures here and there? And that is why over the years, majority of a whole lot of our leaders have stylishly abandoned replacing those infrastructure, because it's going to cost a lot of money. And for you to do infrastructure in the midst of inflation, in the midst of currency depreciation, your GDP is down and it's not improving, then you need to borrow money to do it. If you don't want to borrow the money to do that, then you might say, I don't want to borrow money, then I don't want to do this infrastructure, I don't want to build it. Because your GDP today may not be able to develop that infrastructure. That's the reality. Then, if you look at it, let's take it from the state angle. How many states that we see today, if they have to rely on their IGR, they will not develop that state, because the IGR alone cannot even pay the salaries of the civil servants. And yet they want to build roads, they want to construct roads, they want to do a lot of things. So if they don't borrow, they will not be able to do some of those capital projects. But if they do the capital project, for instance, if you look at Oyo State, I traveled to some, and I saw nice roads that they did there. These are villages where agriculture is thriving. So with the good road, then it's easier to move the agricultural produce to the urban area where they can exchange it for cash. But if the road is bad, the cost of moving those agricultural produce to the urban center is going to be high. So the money to recoup from all these capital projects will take a while.
Yeah.
So if you ask me, is it IMF loan that should be used at this point in time? I don't think so, because IMF loan is more of a short-term loan. Meanwhile, what most of these countries are using the loan for are really long-term projects, which the repayment or the proceed on that long-term program is going to take a while. Meanwhile, IMF wants to get their money quickly. So IMF will just tell them, because we need to get our money quickly, you need to implement these policies here and there. So people that access IMF, they know that they pay back that loan. They understand the policy, but they are in the need of money. That's the reality.
Wow.
All
They
right,
have
sir,
money,
because
so they just have to get it.
sir, when you were talking, you
And the other
mentioned,
thing,
right,
Okay.
you said something. You said that the IMF loans are actually for short term. And you know the way loans work. You take a loan and say, oh, I want to use it for so to set up a particular business. It takes time to even, go with the process of setting up. Maybe you have to, build a structure, and just like you mentioned, roads and, infrastructural facilities that a country will need. Now, the government is aware that these loans that are given to them are actually for a short term. That means already the policy itself has already, it's been fashioned to fail. I mean, you are not supposed to be able to pay back. That's what it looks like from what you have said, because these loans that they collect are supposed to be for long term. But the IMF policy says that their policy and their loan is for short term. So is it the government that is not, understanding what these loans are about? And just like you said, because you need the money, they are already drawn away by their loss, and they still go ahead.
Because even the roads and infrastructure that these monies are being borrowed for, do we have any refinery that is working?
No.
Meanwhile, we are celebrating a private, we're talking about Dangote's refinery being open in a bid. So where are the monies that we have borrowed and kept Nigerians in poverty for so many years for?
So there are two sides to the IMF loan.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of the debate, the first side is to look at the IMF loan and say that borrow from IMF loan, they have from day one the intention of not paying back. And that is not fair to the members that come together to fund in IMF. So there are people that are challenging IMF, say that, look, the funds you are giving these countries is like donation, because ultimately they don't pay back. So what happens to the other members that are contributing to this pause? Because the money that IMF is using are contributed by the members. So it's just like you having a corporate society and everybody is putting money there and they borrow you money. So if you don't pay back, if a member B needs the money tomorrow, they will be out of fund, or you call the other members to say that bring the money all over again. And that is the reason why some people say that, look, if IMF is not putting a stringent policies to make sure that they recoup this money, most countries will just see it as free donation. So they will just collect the money with the intention of not paying back. But when they realize that your condition as a country and you have done every reforms that they say you should do according to their policy, but they realize that you are struggling to break even, then they can take a decision with the other members and waive that for you. When they waive it for you, it's not as if they are not going to give you another loan, because waiving the loan for you does not mean that you will come out of that situation. So if they have waived the loan for you, then you still need the money to keep the economic move.
So you borrow yet another one while the previous one has been waived. Amazing.
Yes, you have to borrow to keep, otherwise the economy will remain standstill.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Mr. Fisayo. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us this insight on this particular topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. We're grateful.
Thank you.